Hello, welcome everyone. Thanks for being here. As Mike said, I'm a senior web engineer at HumanMade, and we're here to talk about modernizing at scale and how we use full-site editing for our projects. And HumanMade recently partnered with the Wikimedia Foundation to kind of modernize their user experience. So let's get started. A little bit about the Wikimedia Foundation. If you're not familiar, they're the people behind Wikipedia and a lot of other free knowledge projects. A little bit about scale. They currently have 16 different language sites and up to maybe 1.5 million page views monthly. So not the largest one in terms of page views that we work with, but not your average website either. They have a global contributor community, and of course, they're a community-focused organization. So let's talk about our challenge. We were tasked to modernize their editorial and front-end user experience, while also supporting a new content structure. They wanted to kind of reorganize all of their information architecture and content structure. High amounts of traffic while we're doing that. And of course, multi-language, multicultural needs. The site is in multiple languages, including Arabic. So we'll talk about this later, but we had to support right to left. So we have accessibility requirements. We set out for WCAG 2.2 AA, from the start. And then, keeping in mind contributor workflows, not changing things so drastically that we can't train people how to use the new system. And so we were updating an existing theme, which means we weren't starting from scratch. We were already using the block editor inside of posts, but not for templates. We didn't have themes.json set up yet, but we were ahead of the curve with some custom solutions. And so sometimes those became problems when we were modernizing. So things like once upon a time, we didn't have typography controls and things like that built in as block options. And so we created block styles to be able to choose, your different font sizes or your background colors for when we didn't have color controls. And so some of those things needed to be replaced with core block options. And then, of course, we're working at scale. So we have a lot of pages with a lot of blocks, a lot of different content editors. So we have to make sure that we're building an intuitive and enjoyable experience. We're trying to maintain consistency across all of the language sites. And we're building accessibility in at every stage. So what that means to us is we're not just building everything and getting to a week from launch and running a giant accessibility audit, making a giant spreadsheet of all the things that are broken, and somebody will fix those someday, right? No. We talk about accessibility from day one. So we're talking about, who are your users? What are their needs? Let's make sure that every user can access the site in the way that works for them. And so, we're looking at making sure that you're choosing fonts that are readable in other languages as well. Making sure that your color contrast works for all users, making sure that your font size is big enough. Something that I realized slowly over the years is that we are all temporarily abled. So, there are lots of different types of disabilities, and that can be like you're holding something and you only have one arm to work with, but that's temporary, to, lots of different types of, long-term disabilities. And so we want to make sure that we're keeping users' needs in mind. And then, of course, cultural sensitivity, making sure that in your iconography you're choosing things that translate across languages, or that you're providing the ability to swap out different icons and images and things like that in other language sites. And so, working at scale, I read this article recently, Amy Hoop, The Systems of Harm, and it really resonated with me. She's given talks on this as well, but it just, I like to think about this, that when you're building a design system and you're working at scale and your site's going to be used by millions of people, you want to make sure that the solutions that you're building in, the things that you're building are helpful because every decision gets multiplied across your whole network. And so good patterns become exponentially beneficial, but bad patterns become exponentially more problematic. And so how do we build in good decisions? And so you kind of want to break down, like, what are good decisions for your product? And so we had some different goals. We wanted to make sure that we're empowering Wikimedia's team. And so, on the editorial side, we want to make sure that it's really easy for them to engage their users, to build that content, make sure it's easy to make it accessible. So for some of the, like an example of that, we actually turned off the choices to choose text color. So they can choose background color, and then we automatically have styles that apply text color that gives the color contrast that's appropriate for that background color. So the editors, when they're choosing their colors, they don't have to think about, like, does this color go with that color? Is that accessible? Do I need to look up this color contrast ratio? We take care of that for them. They don't have to think about that. And so, but then we also want to make sure that we're building in kind of some governance guidelines. So as there are training teams, we're training, across like a broad spectrum of people from different countries and cultures and languages. We want to make sure that it's easy for them to follow those branding guidelines, for them to publish content that meets all of their needs. And so some of the things we do at HumanMade is we build in publishing workflows. So you can say, I don't want you to be able to publish this post if it has more than 500 words, or if it doesn't have a featured image included, or if it doesn't meet these SEO guidelines that are provided by Yoast or whatever SEO plugin that you're using. You can go ahead and build those into your publishing workflow so that then you can't publish the post if it doesn't meet the right guidelines for your branding. And so we decided to take a leap of faith with full-site editing. And so the question, why was it a leap of faith? Well, it's an investment in the future. Every project you have to kind of consider what your budget is and how much you're able to do and what your needs are going to be and how well the solution that you're creating is going to meet those needs. And so when you're setting up a new site or when you're switching an existing theme over to take on new technology like this, to bring in full-site editing, you've got an initial setup period where it's really hard to show project progress. So, we went through like the whole setting up theme.json with our fonts and our colors and our spacings and all of that. And during that period, it's really hard to demo what you're working on. And so that's something where it really helps to have trust built in the team already to get you through that period. And then, of course, we have scope limitations. So, we were able to rebuild a lot of features. We were able to modernize a lot of things. But we didn't get to everything. We still have, our templates are still in PHP, like our page templates. So we'll talk about that more later. But we had to kind of decide, like, does it really make sense to move it into full-site editing if we can't go all the way? But we decided that it was. Full-site editing makes sense for them because it brings them a unified editing experience. We were able to get that header and footer into the site editor. And that means that for every language site, they're able to change their menus. They're able to change easily change their site logo and, some of their translation strings and anything that they need to do from right there within the WordPress admin. For training, it's easier to train people because it looks the same. You're using blocks here, you're using blocks there. No big deal, right? Full-site editing also unlocks new WordPress core features that we didn't have access to yet, like being able to set the font settings within blocks and setting your spacing scales. And it also makes it really easy to manage which block options are available. So you can say, like, I don't want people to have gradients. I don't want people to have custom colors. I don't want people to have box shadows. Like, that doesn't fit within our design system. So we just took all those things away. So you can kind of build in those guardrails for consistency, and it helps for this site and that site to still feel like they're part of the same family. And then, of course, we also like as human-made, we like a close-to-core strategy. We feel like that future-proofs our platforms so that as new core releases come out, as new features are available, we're able to adopt them much more easily. So let's talk a bit about implementation. So we were building a block-based design system. And so what that means is, I'm sure probably everyone's familiar with design systems, but the idea is that you've got like a system of components. And instead of, once upon a time, we built all of our designs from top to bottom in Photoshop, and everything was just supposed to be just like that, pixel perfect. And it's definitely going to look like that in every browser, right? All the time, at every size. Perfect. Nah. We know now that that's not how the web works, and responsive design has been a thing for quite a while now. And so I think that the next logical step is the design systems. And so we're not doing top to bottom designs, we're doing components designs. And so we're looking at each individual piece of a site that you can build out to match your kind of branding guidelines, make sure that they all look good together, make sure that they're interchangeable, you can move them around on a page, you can change what order they go in, but they all look like they're part of the same system. And guess what? That's how blocks work. So that works really well. I think combining WordPress with as a design system, you're basically building an interactive design system. And so we're also building in, proactive accessibility. So for every block we build, we make sure that at the design stage that we're checking all of the user needs that we already discovered in our original discovery session. We're making sure that that block is getting tested at every stage as we're building it, that we're interacting with the site as a keyboard user, that we're checking how it works in different scenarios. And so we're also, the close to core thing though, the other thing that we're doing with this is we're identifying which blocks really need to be custom. So a lot of times you don't have to build something custom. The example on the screen, we're looking at a card component, and it has an image and a title and a paragraph blurb, and sometimes it has a background. So it could be a custom block. We've definitely built custom card blocks at various points. But in this case, we're like, why does it need to be custom? It could just be a group block with an image and a core title and a core paragraph inside of it. It's a block pattern. So we really took on block patterns a lot. And we looked at, design fundamentals. I feel like I got ahead of this slide a little bit already. But we looked at, typography, spacing steps. A lot of times with the spacing steps, you might say, I want people to be able to add padding and margins of 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, but not 35 and a half. So you want to make sure that you've got your spacing steps set up so that the site looks and feels consistent. We're building in clamps into those settings so that on mobile sites or on the mobile views, you have less spacing, because has anyone ever been to a site and then, it's got this much space between elements, because that looks good on desktop, but not on mobile. So we're automatically scaling those down, and then some of the smallest sizes you don't want to scale down. So you're just kind of thinking about that at each step. Button styles and the interactions for all of those forms and button styles, making sure that as you're tabbing through, that you're getting your focus styles, you know where you are on the page. Yeah, so a little bit of stats here kind of pulled out. So we built, as part of the UX refresh, we built 8 new blocks and 19 new block patterns. That's part of a kind of overall 56-ish custom blocks. And I say ish because we are maintaining some in the theme and some are in plugins that we maintain, but then we also have blocks that are coming in from things like Gravity Forms and other plugins that we don't maintain. So getting an exact number requires looking at a lot of different places. But we have 65 total block patterns, and we're also extending core blocks. So we like to do things like we take the core columns block and we allow you to put vertical rules in between the columns so that you can see like lines in between the columns, things like that. And we make that a block style by just extending the core block, adding a new block style. And then, of course, we also did some functionality and style updates just to make the rest of the site that we weren't really touching look like it was part of the whole new site. And so one of the first blocks that I wanted to talk about is a mega menu block. And this was a big part of moving those headers and footers into the site editor. Previously, we were using classic menus, and we had a lot of customizer settings for translation strings and different logos that we swapped out on different sites. And, it was not the best experience for editors when they had to update something to figure out, where do I go in the customizer panel to get to this thing that I want to change? And so we wanted to pull all of that into the site editor and give them a mega menu. And so that required thinking through, how's this all going to work? And so we have the mega menu here from the desktop. The mega menu block is actually it's exposed publicly as a plugin. HumanMade has on, in our GitHub repo, so it's something that you guys could use. It's still in development. I'm sure that there are things that you'll want to do that it doesn't do yet, but it's really good, already as it is right now. And basically, what it does is you have the top tab part is editable within your header template part, and then the inside area is a registered template part that, of course, since it's a WordPress template part, you can put anything you want to inside of it. And so you can add your columns, you can add the core navigation blocks or paragraphs or a query loop. And then, we also have the language picker is also using that mega menu block. And so we've built a custom language picker that interfaces with the multilingual press to go out and check and see if we have any translations for the current page that you're on right now. Then the language picker will show up, and you'll be able to switch between different language versions of that page. Some pages don't have a translation, and so that block doesn't show up at all. Here's an example of the same menu on mobile. It's the same menu, same code, same output, same everything, same management within the block editor. Where the top level of that, outside of the mega menus, is a core navigation block, and so we have nested mega menus inside of that. And then, like I said, each inner menu part is a template part, so you can still access and edit all of those in the site editor. And the next one we want to talk about is carousels. Carousels aren't probably anything new. Everybody's doing carousels, but I really liked our approach to this. Call out to my colleague Alexi for getting this one started. That this one's really close to core. We just have an outer wrapper that is like a custom block. It's kind of like a group block, but custom. So it's just a wrapper block that is carousel, so that we can add all of our classes for JavaScript and our extra markup for the slider and all of that stuff. But then inside of that, we're allowing 2 different blocks. So you can either add groups, or you can add the query block. And so if it's groups, that gives you a lot of flexibility. You can basically make anything you want to in a carousel. So you can have a carousel of cards, or you can have, in this case, a big hero carousel, where inside of that group block, you can put your columns, you can put images, you can put whatever you want to. And then on the carousel outer wrapper block, we have settings for things like how many slides to show at one time on desktop, and then we scale that automatically for smaller screens. And so this hero pattern, though, we also have as a block pattern. So if you want to use it without a carousel, you can. It's just the same thing. The block pattern is used inside the carousel. But you can use it by itself. And we also have settings in our carousel JavaScript so that if there's not more than one slide, it doesn't turn itself into a carousel. We don't load all that like extra JavaScript that we don't need. So if somebody starts out by just building a carousel and then they're like, actually, I only want one slide, they don't have to change it to get it to be just the block pattern. It's fine the way it is. So again, same block, same carousel block, but now we've got a news carousel, and this is using the core query block. So you can just drop that in, and if the child of the carousel is a query block, instead of using the immediate child as the slides, like if it uses groups, each group is a slide. But if it has the query inside of it, each of the individual posts in the query is a slide. And you can set, again, how many posts do you want to show per page of slides. And so in this example, we have 3 posts in a page, but each one is their own separate slide. We're just showing 3 at a time. And that allows us to do things like scale it down to 1 at a time on mobile. And because I mentioned earlier, everything has to work in right to left. So this is an example of the same news carousel on the Arabic site. And one of the things we ran into that's fun for making things work in right to left is that everything is backwards. And so when we first built the block, the arrows were opposite. And so we had to figure out how to switch those around, because on a right to left site, the advance to the next page of slides button should be on the left. And so, and also face to the left. Our arrows were backwards and facing the wrong way. So it was, that was just, that was one of the things we had to figure out. And we had some language settings for the site that we had to adjust to make sure that the site was actually saying, hey, I am a language that is supposed to be in right to left, or I am a site, I'm supposed to be in right to left, I am supposed to be using Arabic, I am supposed to be located in this region where this is a thing. And so that's, one of the fun adventures that you get when you're working at that scale. So just another quick example. This is a cards carousel. So it's the same thing. You're using group blocks. You can put whatever you want to inside of them. And you can tell it, like, I want 2 at a time. And so the next block I want to talk about is a geolocated donation block. And so, Wikimedia runs on donations. And so they have, a big part of what they do, of course, in addition to providing all the excellent content that they do, is also making sure that they can afford to provide that content. And so, they have a donation block that they needed us to build, but they wanted for that to automatically ask people to donate based on the currency of where they live, so that it's not prompting you if you live in India or Malaysia or anywhere else around the globe, it's not prompting you to donate in US dollars. And so we were able to grab the IP geolocation based on the country code value from the HTML request header. And then so we take that, and then we're kind of processing that and providing different currency types and different potential values. I mean, this is kind of like a starting value. I hope most people are giving them more than $2. But you want a place to start. So we're providing them with different currency types and different values just based on the location where you are right now. And then being a block, you also have translation strings for all of the other bits. And so some of that is managed within the site editor, and then some of it are things where we had to be able to kind of hard code our special links to the donation page to pre-populate all the values. And so for those pieces, we have still some PHP translation strings in the template, and making sure that those get translated and are available for all of those language sites. And just in this image, we have an example of in the English US site, and then also the Arabic site. And so what's next on the roadmap? We have a lot of ideas. We have more existing blocks that we want to update, bringing in some of the new styles, just kind of refreshing them. So across the site, we got to as much as we could, but there's still a few blocks here and there that we'd like to refresh a bit more. We want to build some new things. So we have like a video playlist block that's on the roadmap. Wikimedia wants to be able to do like more of that kind of engaging video-based content where you're currently watching a video and it's suggesting other things that are related to what you're watching right now. We want to do more geolocated content, especially for the ways to give page, so that it's and like the ways to be involved, things like that, so that they can provide content specifically for in the area that you're in. Here's some ways that you can get engaged with Wikimedia. Here's some ways that you can volunteer, or here's some different ways that you can donate, legacy giving, things like that. Different rules for different countries about what you're allowed to do there. So there's that, and then of course we didn't build a whole new theme from scratch, so we still have more cleanup to do, and we really, really want to move all of those page templates into full site editing. We've got everything in block template parts, but we just weren't able to move like the PHP outer template files themselves. So we really want to get those in, just to give them a little bit more flexibility to clean up the theme a bit and make it more modern. And so some takeaways. What worked well? We all have aligned values, so Wikimedia's values line up really well with WordPress's iterative, content-driven approach. They're totally on board with getting in, starting something, iterating over time. We had a really strong team foundation starting out. That really helped us to take some bold actions and to have that trust that what we were doing was the right thing for them. And then, of course, they have a really empowered content team. They're really involved. They're really actively engaged with the conversations that we're having, providing us information about what their needs are, and they love the flexibility that we've given them with these changes. Recommendations. If you all are about to set out on a similar journey, I think the first thing you need to do is just kind of assess the state of where you are right now. What is your budget? What does your theme look like? How old is it? How many people have touched it over the years? When you onboard new developers, does it take them a week to get up to speed? Does it take them a month? If your code is in really kind of rough condition, if you're going to have to migrate a lot of shortcodes into custom blocks, you're going to have to build a bunch of custom blocks. Sometimes it's faster and it's less expensive to just do a full rebuild. A full migration, rebuild a new theme. Sometimes upgrading the old stuff takes a really long time and you can't figure out why things aren't working. So just create a realistic roadmap. Think about what are your business needs? What is your time frame? Do you have any big events coming up? Is there any code freeze or content freeze periods for the website that you want to build your new build around, so that you hit those right milestones at the right times? And then just plan for iterative improvements. I think that's really the best thing that you can do. I think that it's too easy to get stuck in the perfection is key trap, where you're just trying to get it to be just that much better. And you can spend months doing that. But if you can go ahead and launch the site when it's 95% there, and and then from there you can just continue to build new things, iterate, fix bugs, things like that over time. So we have some time for questions, and I just want to thank you all for being here. And the QR code is for my LinkedIn. I am on the Making WordPress Slack, Joeleen K. Welcome questions.
Did you have any kind of internal rules or guidelines for how you decided whether this was going to be a block pattern made up of just core blocks, or if you decided to go for a completely custom block?
Yeah, we like to think about what are our needs, So I think that there's a lot of situations where you can look at something and you kind of break apart, what are we doing here? And so if it can be done with core blocks and it's going to be easy to maintain, we don't need anything special, then yeah, absolutely, why not make a block pattern? because it's so fast to make a block pattern, and then if it turns out later that actually you, for some reason, needed to be custom, then you can do that. But then we've also had situations where we have, like for other clients, we have a featured articles block. And you might say, why not use the core query block for that? Well, you could, unless you wanted to be able to choose specifically which posts. From like all the posts, just choose like 3 that you want to put in it. Unless you wanted to be able to like customize, I want this image to be different here than it is on the featured image for that post when you get to the post. I want this title to be a shorter version of the title for the post. So there are situations like that where sometimes you have to build a custom block in order to meet the needs of what you're building. But if we can, we go for block patterns first, because usually what we start out to do is just infinite. There are so many things that we would love to do, that we can do, that our clients would like us to do, and there's only so much time. And so if we can make a block pattern, we go to that first because it just saves so much time. All right. Well, thank you all. If there's no more questions, I really want to thank you again for being here. This is great.